Nobody knows what I feel inside. All I know, I walk.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Right Side Up. My name is Mike Taglavia. My co-host this week is Dylan Maguire. We will be talking politics in your neighborhood, how it's affecting you. Mostly, well, some of it is going to be, it'll be regarding to New Hampshire as well, but mostly Vermont. We've got a lot of stuff going on in the Vermont legislature. In these next coming weeks, hopefully we will, fingers crossed, we will be actually adjourning in May. Hopefully there will be no last minute shenanigans that we have to deal with that drives us into June, but it's looking like we may possibly get out in May. But Dylan, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Glad to have you with us this week. So, shall we dive right into some of this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so last week, ladies and gentlemen, I beat up on some of the green energy nonsense that we've had to deal with in Vermont. And I've got more, so we can just dive right in here. As you know, I tell you a lot about some of the authors on Substack, and this article I'd like to discuss is again from one of the Substack subscribers or authors I subscribe to. It's through Thomas J. Shepstone on his Substack, but he is quoting here from Isaac Orr and Mitch Rowling, and these are the energy bad boys. And they write an article about, I'm sure everyone has heard about the blackouts in Spain, countrywide.
Spain, Portugal, and I believe parts of southeast France as well were affected by that.
So it was a massive area.
Well, and around the same time, the whole island of Puerto Rico went dark.
How nice. So green energy is great, just as long as you don't need electricity. It's great as long as you...
I think it was more than just green energy failure.
Well, it was a failure of the system, and that's why I want to get into this, because it's really deep. There's a lot of detail, and like I said, this is Thomas J. Shepstone on Substack, so if you want to go back, ladies and gentlemen, and check it out, you can subscribe to most of these free, but all of these authors do like if you can help support them, because they're putting out a lot of really excellent information. So let me get into this. This is a quick note. Hi, everyone. We're back to once a week, just in time for Spanish blackouts. And this is the Energy Bad Boys. We couldn't have written this piece without the help of our friend Guillem Sanchez Ramirez, a Spanish nuclear engineer who works with the nonprofit Econo Nuclears, an organization working to save Spain's nuclear plants. And they need to be working harder, because after this blackout, they need nuclear energy more than you can imagine. So if you like this article, you have the means, please send them a little dinero. And I'm just quoting from the preamble to this. Okay, into the article. On April 28th, 2025, 50 million people in Spain were affected by a massive countrywide blackout. According to Bloomberg, about 15 gigawatts of power, about 60% of the country's generation, vanished from the grid in a matter of seconds right before the blackout at around 12:35 p.m. The sudden outage caused massive cascading outage that disrupted businesses, hospitals, public transportation, and communication systems, leaving most of the nation without power for approximately 12 to 14 hours. And I want to pause here for a minute. Imagine this is in Vermont and this happens, and it's at one of the coldest nights in the middle of February, and it goes down for 12 to 14 hours. Those of us who are on the grid are not going to be affected. Those of us who have a wood stove will not feel it quite so badly. But what of the Vermonters who need, like, hospital care? Those of us who need electricity for life support. Then what? Then what?
So, I think globally,
yeah,
we don't have as robust electrical infrastructure as we want to think we do.
No, we don't.
I think it's been very, especially in the Northeast, where and across the whole country, where we've had this push for electrification that started in the early 1900s and finished up in the 1950s.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of aging infrastructure out there.
And let's not forget that a lot of our energy goes to petroleum energy goes to heating, not just electricity-based heat. So in our state, we're trying to force one option for everything, which is the most dangerous thing I ever heard.
With all the heat pumps that have been put in
Yeah.
Vermont and
Yeah.
New Hampshire, for Vermont, it has not seen a significant decrease in the amount of heating oil used
No.
and an actual uptick in the amount of propane used.
Yes. Yeah. You know why? Because when those heat pumps fail, the people who got rid of their wood stoves in place of the heat pump realize that they need backup. They need and for their insurance company, they better have backup, because the insurance company will likely try to drop them if they don't have a backup.
Oh, I think
source.
We haven't, since the big push, we haven't had a cold January yet, like a 20 below good stretch of it.
Yeah, I mean 3 or 4 days straight at 20 below, and we'll see with them what happens.
The high of 0 during the day.
Yeah,
and that'll be, and because they just don't.
You mean a true Vermont winter?
They claim, all these manufacturers claim that, yes, we still have a 95% efficiency or whatever it is down to 0.
Right.
To make heat, but that's not really the case.
No, once the heat pumps I'm used to, and they were a little bit older, but below 32, they struggled.
No, they're great for shoulder seasons. They're great for cooling. They do have their place in this makeup.
Right, but mostly not in Vermont.
Well, they are a great way. Like I said, especially like this time of year, a day like this where it's 55 degrees and damp.
Yeah,
and you don't. It's not quite. It's not really cold enough to try to have a fire.
Yeah,
but you want some heat to take that dampness out.
You're right, and like you said, they're great because they're most efficient when you turn them on and leave them. Walk away and leave them alone, because they can maintain a temperature. You don't want serious, drastic highs and lows and expect super efficiency out of a heat pump. That's not what you're going to get. If you want to maintain a specific temperature for a long period of time, a heat pump will do it for you economically.
So we're about 6 days since the big European power outage, and they still can't pinpoint a cause to it.
They can't pinpoint. Well, in this article, they estimated somewhere I think around $1.82 billion is what they think the cost is.
Oh, but they don't know why it failed.
Oh, the cause. Well, in this article, they talk about how weather-related electricity generated is the problem. They talk about this. What happens is, and you know probably from your electrical experience, switches, when they don't sense enough electricity, there are a lot of protections that went into place.
Yeah, you had a cascading failure.
They had a cascading failure because of frequency. When you lose the frequency, if these switches sense a problem to protect some of the massive, expensive equipment, they just shut it off.
We see that around here currently because as we're adding more demand to the grid without increasing supply, we're cranking voltage up. So if you're one of the first few things off the line after the substation, you're getting hammered with voltage.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, your neighbor a mile down the road is not getting enough.
You're absolutely right. Let me get a little bit deeper into this here. The cause. Reports indicate that the blackout was very likely due to a solar plant producing less than expected, and seconds later there was a massive drop in other renewable electricity production. Just before the blackout hit, solar photovoltaic PV panels supplied 60% of demand. Solar thermal supplied 5%, and wind supplied 12%, meaning 78% of the electricity load was met with weather-based intermittent resources. Nuclear accounted for 11.63%. Coal just 0.79%.
So would the theory be that a solar storm perhaps overpowered the solar panels?
I don't know. Or, just bad weather. A cloudy day.
Well, the theory I've heard without any evidence to back it up,
right,
was that a drop in the electromagnetic sphere of the atmosphere allowed more solar radiation to hit that area.
That could very well be,
which caused your solar panels to go into whatever
protection mode,
and so. That was the theory for what happened in Puerto Rico about the same time.
Well, the sudden loss of large-scale solar generation in southern Spain caused a sharp drop in system frequency.
Well, you have that drop in frequency because you're not. So you lose it. And they won't like that. Where Spain's located is closer to the equator, so they get, generally speaking, a more consistent amount of daylight throughout the year. So it would be, it probably is a beneficial place for solar where it would pay for the investment.
Okay.
So, but if you got to have something to back up that you can quickly ramp up.
That's what they don't have, and this is what the article gets into. So the drop in system frequency, which in turn triggered protective mechanisms in other generators under frequency protection relays across the system. These protection mechanisms automatically caused other generators, namely Spain's nuclear and other thermal plants, to trip offline, which you can see in the graph, and there's a graph that shows it. And it contributed to cascading failure that caused a widespread blackout. As a result, Javier Blas, an opinion columnist at Bloomberg, called the outage the first major blackout of the renewable energy era. Okay, normally a drop in frequency can be mitigated. This is why we still need hydroelectric, nuclear electric, or coal or gas powered. This next couple of paragraphs. Normally in a drop in frequency can be mitigated by the spinning inertia of large conventional generators, such as coal, natural gas, nuclear, hydroelectric plants. However, wind and solar PV are inverter-based IBRs, not to be confused with IBS, that do not provide any inertia to the grid. So if these generators go down, they're still spinning and they're still creating electricity, but they're giving people and systems enough time to sense that there's an outage to make up for the loss without the loss of frequency, so it's not a massive go into protection mode and shut things down. And that's what happened. To take a step back, grid inertia refers to the ability of an electrical power system to maintain stable frequency in response to a sudden change in supply or demand. Inertia is primarily provided by the kinetic energy stored in the rotating masses of synchronous generators like the conventional generators listed above. In other words, the old school way is still the best way.
Well, I don't think it's quite as simple as that, because you have places where certain things make sense, but you have to have some redundancy within the grid,
which we didn't bake in, they took out.
You try, because you've had this war on nuclear, you've had this war on fossil fuels, you've had this complete and utter of it's solar and wind or nothing.
Yeah,
and Europe
it's renewable or nothing.
A very big place for that.
Yeah,
you see, like Germany,
Germany has crippled itself because of what it's done.
They were relying on Russian natural gas to power themselves.
Yeah,
so they've been on 3 years of minimal imports of Russian natural gas.
Yeah.
And then they lie on their green energy stats because they use these. It's the coal that's not the soft coal,
right?
Is what they use in their plants.
They're using dirtier coal than if they were to get it from us, which is a much cleaner, hotter burning coal.
Yeah, and they keep they keep those plants on all the time,
right?
But they discount it when their renewables make some power, so they're not
right,
because it takes about a day to ramp those dirty coal plants up,
right.
So they never really shut off.
Mm-hmm. So they're still running.
It's that funny math.
Yeah. So all right, we're coming to the end of this segment here. So we're going to need to drag this into the next segment. But in Vermont, we're talking about 100% renewable, and it's really not the best way for us to go, so we can avoid these massive blackouts. All right, we'll return in a couple minutes. You're listening to Right Side Up.
I know you said he was just a friend. But I saw him kiss you again and again.
Not everyone can get up every day and look for ways to piss people off. But here at GranicRock.com, we do that almost every day. I can't tell you how many times someone's lost their SHIT and threatened to end us. We're still here, pissing people off. It's almost like we enjoy it, and we've been doing it since 2006. That's almost 2 decades of news, politics, and opinion, and now podcasts, and we're just getting started. We believe in principles before parties and politicians. We defend free markets and individual liberty, and if that makes you mad, it makes us smile. We're like Grandma after she stopped caring what other people thought. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granic Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Right Side Up. My name is Mike Taglavia. My co-host this week is Dylan Maguire. I want to get back into this article just briefly and just talk about the costs, some of the costs that they're estimating that are as a result from this blackout. This says, according to the Insurance Journal, Spain's main business lobby, CEOE, estimated the outage would shave 1.6 billion euros or $1.82 billion or 0.1% off the gross domestic product, noting it could take oil refineries a week or more to resume their operations fully, and that some industrial ovens had been damaged. The meat industry, never even thought about this, estimated losses of up to 190 million euros as refrigerators lost power, among other factors. The blackout lasted more than 12 hours in some areas of Spain. So that the huge losses, because there's no electricity, depending, you think I brought it into perspective, or tried to, in the cold time of year, and freeze-ups and maybe loss of life, stuff like that. What about in warm areas? Everybody thinks, well, it's not so bad. Really? What happens when your supermarkets have to throw out most of the food that's in there, or all of the food that's in the refrigerated cases, because all your ice cream and everything else and your meat,
if you lose your fridge at home and you have to throw out everything that's in it because it gets too.
Yeah.
That's why, like, people, when they do, if they know they're going to lose power, they'll freeze, they'll like leave a nickel on a ice cube.
I'm not sure. I'm not following you.
So if you lose power and your coin is in the ice cube opposed to on top of it, you know that everything froze and then thawed out, and then
so it's your indicator if you've gone away for a while.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know, because when I lived in a different state, I had a friend. He and his wife were out of state, and I was riding around on my tractor one day, and I noticed that the 2 primary wires heading back to his place, he lived out behind me, so he had a longer driveway, and I noticed the primary wires were crossing. I'm like, that's not a good thing. So I called him and told him, and then I called the power company, and he called me back. He said, hey, go and check on my fridge. And sure enough, everything had been that way for a while, and I hadn't noticed it because we had a windstorm a week prior. And he told me, he said, just leave the fridge closed, let it freeze back up. I'll deal with it when I get home.
Yep.
So you're right. Without an indicator, you might not know.
And that's just something to think about. So
I think you had some statistics to share with our
I did.
audience
So over the last quarter century, since 2000, New England has gone from a breakdown of, we had 7% renewables, 7% oil-based, 6% hydro, 27% nuclear, 14% imported power, 16% coal, and 25% natural gas. Of that would be our power generation in the year 2000 for New England. We've gone to 12% renewables, 7% of hydro, so that's gone up by 1%.
Right.
Less than 1% is now coal.
Right.
51% natural gas, 23% nuclear, and we import 9%.
So where's the renewables in there? How much is that increase?
Increased 5%.
5% in 25 years.
In 25 years.
Okay.
So it's probably, if you went by megawatt or kilowatt production, it's increased more than that, as demand's also increased to.
That is the reason why. This is just my guess. We remember back in the beginning of the session here in Vermont, it was a big deal. It was supposed to be, the clean heat standard was top of the schedule. It needed to be dealt with so we could move on. And then the election happened, and the majority decided to put the clean heat standard on the back burner. So with the clean heat standard still lurking, still hanging over our head, we could have this possibility of some sort of carbon tax, whatever you call it, fee, whatever. No matter what you call it, it's still added money on top of our reliable sources of energy.
So we're going to do nothing to address affordability.
Well, no, but we're going to force people into the renewables. Yes, you're right. It won't address affordability at all.
As we're looking around through this whole debate, we're in the shape of with education that we're in, because we don't have the younger population coming in, that we're not
staying here,
even if you look at by simple math of the national demographic breakdown, there's so millennials are now turning getting to 40, and that population is roughly 69 million for that generation. You go down to Gen Z, which I believe is, I think, 69 million.
Okay.
So that's your 20. I think the cutoff for that's 96, 97.
Okay.
So 97 to 2012.
Okay.
Is that population. And then Gen Alpha is 2012, 2013 to now.
Okay.
And that's projected to be about 45 million people.
Okay.
So a typical population graph, it's a pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
That would be an inverted pyramid.
Okay. Not good.
So that's not good, and we're seeing it. So it's worse. It's worse in a state like Vermont, where you don't have that economic opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
We
haven't. And I just want to get back to present day. Yeah. We haven't worked on it. We just really haven't. We've been nibbling around the edges. We passed over 70 bills, but we haven't addressed affordability at all.
No.
We haven't addressed the housing at all, which they're both tied. And we haven't addressed public safety. And I know one of the things you wanted to talk about later on in the show was a public safety issue that a Chittenden County state's attorney is thumbing her nose apparently at the population again. But we get into that again later.
I think that states right now that are making pro-family policies are going to be it's not going to pay off in 5 or 10 years, more like 20, where you have that next base coming up through. Because because I didn't think about it until I heard this, where we're starting to see this would be we're coming into the 18-year-olds that would have been born in 2007, when the great financial crisis and the Great Recession came into place and birth rates dropped. So you have a lower population of 18-year-olds coming in now than you did 2 years ago.
Right. Okay.
So you're not having that population to go work at these restaurants and these stores and
period, to work anywhere.
But it's hard to find them if they don't exist.
You're right. And we are not sending a message to the rest of the country, let alone the rest of the world, that we are actually interested in having them come here. We really not. There's nothing that is coming out of the legislature, and there's nothing. Our economic outlook isn't better today than it was 6 months ago.
No,
it's not really.
You can't treat policies the same way you did 10 years ago, because you're having this large generation retiring, so they're top of the tax bracket, and they're going to start, and they're not. So then their income's going to drop. You're losing that portion of taxes. Where's the money going to come from? I think
we're going to turn the state into a giant country club, Dylan.
No,
that's what I think.
You don't have the staff for that. Like that theory, the state's going to go bankrupt. Bottom line, Vermont will blow out California to become the first state to become bankrupt.
Well, I hope that doesn't happen. But I know exactly what you're talking about. But there are plenty of people, I think, and even walking around the halls of the state house.
It will not matter when you don't have public safety. You don't have the staff to be the waitress to bring your drink at the country club.
You're preaching to the choir, bud.
But that's what I'm saying is you're not. It goes deeper than that.
Like,
you've had generational leadership that has not wanted to plant trees for younger generations to sit in with the shade of.
Yeah, and how many other failed? Let's see, what are we going to call them? Socialist, Marxist, tyrannical governments or states must we see before we learn from history? How many? That's the question I have. It's the history of the world, even recent past 50 years, has shown. I mean, there are countries now in South America that are growing economically far faster than we are as a state, and I don't understand that. I'm glad they are. Maybe we can use those as an example.
It's got to be a hard look in the mirror. Okay, so 5 years ago, looked at Vermont's fiscal year budget for 2019, 2020. It was like $3.9 billion. Okay.
Yeah. Now it's a little over $9 billion.
How do we do almost a 3x of a budget in 5 years and expect to not have any consequences?
Because it's
with a population that didn't explode by 3x.
The supermajority and the majority. We still have a majority of Democrats that still believe that we can just turn around and say we need more of your tax dollars. They really, truly believe that. They don't believe that lowering taxes is the solution. They believe in more programs. Look, I see the number of bills that are come out. We're just shy of 520 bills.
No, I think you're going to see it. It's going to be. I don't know how you're going to get your playground with ghost towns. I don't know how you're going to get your ski resorts without any population there to service that ski resort. I don't know how all this is going to work together if you don't have a base of locals to maintain the infrastructure.
You're absolutely right. And I was talking with someone just this past weekend. This threat of more family leave, more options for family leave. The threat of possibly the rising minimum wage. Taking high schoolers and the possibility of paying a high schooler minimum wage versus a different minimum for someone who's in school, who's just learning, who's just getting into dipping their feet into the job market. Without these young people coming in and learning a work ethic and learning how to do a job, no matter what it is, become able to learn a work ethic, to acquire a work ethic, and then climb the pay scale, you're not going to be able to keep business viable in this state. It's really sad to watch.
Well, you have this large generation that has not wanted to relinquish power in any aspect of their.
No, I know. I see it and hear it every day.
Every single, from government down to private industry.
Yeah.
And so they haven't let the younger generation step up to take over to be able to gain the skills needed. So then when they're gone, you're right. There's going to be such a gap. And the gap is going to need to be taken up if we can manage to get the right majority of people who understand that raising taxes doesn't solve everything. So that we can make this state, I think it can. We can make the state more attractive to populations in other states. That's how we're going to increase our population. Yeah. Dylan, I can tell you right now, I believe if I could force people to tell me the truth, under the Golden Dome in Montpelier, there's a vast majority of people who do not want to see the population of this state grow. Oh no,
I can't believe they do.
It wants to be a nature preserve and build more houses where we already have houses.
Yeah, stack people in cubes And call them houses.
So we had on May 2nd was May Day, also known as International Workers' Day.
Yeah, well.
And so Vermont had its demonstrations, especially up around Chittenden County in the greater Burlington area.
Right.
We had organizers in front of ICE facilities. We had organization they then went to Hannaford supermarkets up there to protest because of some of the recent of Trump's recent proposals for.
Well, we don't. You know what we don't hear? Bringing up the administration and national administration, the Trump administration. Okay, let's go there for a few minutes. We've had the president propose that there should be no tax on tips, but that doesn't get very much coverage, so we'll cover it. There has been a push by the president for there to be no tax on Social Security. And we have a bill that's kind of floating around in Vermont that may wind up coming.
We're still one of 3 states that tax military pensions.
Yes, and we are still, trust me, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't believe we're still working on it, we really, truly are. That's age 43. We still are working on it, and thank you very much for bringing it up. But there was a recent video I saw where the president brought out the idea that the reason he's bringing up his tariffs, and we're going to need to bring this into the next segment, ladies and gentlemen. I just looked and we ran long, so we're going to have to bring this up in the next segment. You're listening to Right Side Up. We'll see you in a couple minutes, ladies and gentlemen.
Nobody knows what I feel inside.
Thanks for tuning in. We hope you'll make time to check out all of our podcasts brought to you by Grok Media LLC and GraniteGrok.com. Mondays at 8 p.m., it's Right Side Up. On Tuesdays, it's our live show from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Granite State Live. Wednesdays, tune in at 8 o'clock for Justice for All. Thursdays, 8 p.m., it's Grok Talk. Friday at 8 p.m., it's Manch Talk. Saturday, again at 8 p.m., The New England Take. And Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, it's Vermont Daily Chronicle Television. We are your source for local podcasts, news, politics, and opinion, brought to you by Grok Media LLC and GraniteGrok.com.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Right Side Up. My name is Mike Taglavia. My co-host is Dylan Maguire. Before we get back into our discussion, I want to remind our listeners, if for some reason you can't listen to us on WNTK radio show, you can go on to WNTK.com, find the podcast button, click on it, scroll down to Right Side Up, and you can listen to any number of our shows. And by all means, share it with a friend if you like it. You can find us on 802 Scoop Facebook. You can find us on 802 Scoop YouTube page. You can find us on Granite Grok. You can find us on Podbean. Am I missing something?
No, I think you got it all.
I think I got it all this time. So I wanted to get back into, we ran a little over, but I wanted to go back over one of the statements that I thought eventually was going to come out, and it finally did. And I'm glad it finally did. The president is trying to, through tariffs, pay down the debt. And even more importantly, he made a statement that his goal is to, with the use of tariffs, make it so that anyone making $200,000 a year or less will not be subject to any federal income tax. Now, I really would love to know who is going to badmouth or vote against that.
So you're going to have the same people out there that try. You see it with these stories of the 2-year-old goes with the parents after they're deported. The 2-year-old stays after the parents are deported. Both are wrong. Just because Trump says it's wrong. No matter, he could say that, he could walk outside and say water is wet, and they will say no, water is dry. It's the same people.
But those are not the ones that I'm talking about. Those that like to be hysterical, to get hysterical and promote hysteria. We are never going to satisfy those in the population. But there are other people, whether they are vocal or not, will pull the curtain come time to vote and vote with logic and reason, okay? Those are the kind of people that I'm talking about. Whether they talk the talk that gets them into the club or keeps them in good standing with their family members. I'm talking about the people who, when behind the curtain, are going to do the right thing. And what I mean is the right thing for themselves, their family, and the country. You're going to have the hysteria no matter what. There's going to be a small sector of that. I don't think there's going to be a lot of it. But, there's a lot. We got 3.5 more years still, so who knows? But it's the people that are still involved in the bureaucracy and the bureaucracy and the government itself. Yeah,
that have been there since the fall of the Soviet Union to the pre-Trump, with Trump's first term.
Right.
That their whole mentality has been economic graph go up, good.
Yeah.
Everything, and we'll do everything to maintain the same order of business that we've been doing since post-World War II, where the U.S. is in charge of patrolling all the seaways to keep those safe. The U.S. is going to bail out these countries and keep their thumb on the scales to maintain a fair leader to...
What didn't exist through most of that, and up until let's say 2010 and up, is the effect of the internet and now smartphones and social media. That's changed a lot. People are able to learn the facts a whole lot faster, and the truth has not taken so much time to come out. It still, in my view, takes way too long to get out, but it's gotten out faster, and I think that's been very helpful. But people need to know how to sift through the BS to get to the truth, but it's you're able to do that. We as a population are able to find on the internet and through social media what's
the
a
best
line
example,
of crap and
best
what's
example
not.
I have will be as AI gets better.
Yeah,
and there'll be more. That'll be the harder fakes to detect against, because you have people to this day that still think that Trump said verifying people on both sides. When if you follow the whole clip, it is
right. And it's a matter of, like you said, following the whole clip, which is not very long, which doesn't take long to find, but it's just a matter of whether you're not going to be lazy or not and actually do your own research. So, that's what it comes down to, right? Mm-hmm. So, and more people wind up doing it. And you have people, look, I know in my case, some of my best supporters, some of my most avid supporters, and some of the people who've been most helpful to me are former Democrats, because they've seen it, they've lived it, they know the games that are played, and then they came to the realization that it was just hocus pocus. It was just smoke and mirrors.
The next few years are going to be tough no matter what happens, because you're seeing the political order shift.
Mm-hmm.
Pre-Trump, it was very much uniparty, as it didn't really matter who you voted for. Some of the same things were going to happen. We're going to go down the same roads.
Yeah,
we were going to the tax rate was going to change a little bit, and where we spent some money was going to change a little bit. We were still going to spend the same amount of money and borrow and borrow and borrow.
Yeah, and
still Obama didn't stop any wars. He maintained Afghanistan and Iraq, and I remember being in high school, and it was, I just can't keep up with the wars. I'm like, and in 2008, and then 2016, we were still in the same wars that we're in when we were in 2008.
Yeah, and who was it, ladies and gentlemen, who started talking about ending this stuff? I know most of the listeners out there know it, but that's the question that needs to still be asked.
So,
and we see, as 47, he's still doing that. He's not promoting war. He's promoting peace and trying to find a way forward to peace. And I think eventually we're going to get there. But like to what you said, the order has been the industry, and the way things have been done is through financing war. And there are a lot of people who are panicking about losing their revenue stream.
Well, that's not just from the war. It's from you're funneling money through USAID or or you're going to another NGO that is paid $2 billion after 1 year after it's founded to go do whatever, which is really just paying staffers and other people to run political campaigns, but it's laundered through all these different NGOs.
Well, and the wonder of the Doge team, it's just like a hammer. A hammer can be used for good. We can build a house with it, or somebody can get hurt with it. So if you use the computer technology to find the waste, which is what they're doing, they're finding the waste. Who is against wasting money?
So to tie this back in, Vermont, you almost 3x the state budget in 5 years.
Right.
So if we ran a program for government efficiency on Vermont's books.
Okay, well,
because you've got enough, you have almost as many NGOs as you do state employees.
Now, I think it was you who told me that 6,300 non-government or non-profits operating in the state of Vermont.
Yes.
That's a lot.
So every person's got 100 people are served by one
Dylan,
NGO.
That's more than my entire district. That's a lot.
Just for, you have 640,000 people in the state. You have 6,300 NGOs. So 100
and how many employees for
people,
each?
Right. So where does the money go?
Why
is our state budget? So you've had, in the last 6 years, you've had 2 terms of supermajority Democrat rule.
Yeah.
That have been and
because of that, the way the budget has been bloated, do you think we could be able to maintain the level of road maintenance that we've had over the past number of years? We haven't. We're going to, I can't remember.
We had projects get pulled because we lost federal funding.
I don't know how much we're losing yet. See, that's a big question mark. But the thing is, because of the way the budget is, because of how much money we have, and trying to keep to the governor's budget, I think the maximum we're going to see is something like 135 miles of road, where we normally would, to be able to maintain a 10-year cycle, 300 miles. So that's going to come.
We haven't maintained a 10-year cycle.
Well, that's going to catch up with us very, very quickly.
It's already caught up with us. They're doing one right now that the last time they touched it was 2010.
Yeah.
And that wasn't even like a full milling down to a repave. That was go over the surface of it. It's been 20 to 25 years since that road has been.
There was another
and that is a very heavily traveled road across from Montpelier to New Hampshire.
Yeah. So you're right. So it is. We are going to reap what we've sown, and it's not going to turn out well.
No,
the harvest is not going to be good.
No. You look at this. You look at the state and the shape we're in.
Yeah.
I can see if decisions are made to not change direction, you will see ghost towns in Vermont.
Well, yeah, and it's very sad. I hope that doesn't happen. I really, truly, we're going to lose. And I've talked to people about this so many times. The goal for me, the goal for a lot of people I'm serving up there with in Montpelier, is to maintain the personality and the heritage of Vermont as it is, so that we can live it, not look at it in the past, in retrospect, in a book or in a museum.
I would love to see, from the end of this session to the start of the next session, a bill in Vermont come out that these large capital firms cannot purchase property.
Oh, well.
I think that would be, you have to put a cap on if you're worth over $500 million. You cannot buy single-family homes.
You mean corporations to be buying? Okay, something to think about. Okay, I see, because I've seen at the national level. I haven't read deep into articles, but that's what I've.
It's one thing if you're gonna have a large corporation come in, put a bunch of money in to build up an development of apartments and things like that.
But you're talking about buying single family or duplexes, and for the sole purpose of renting them.
Yeah.
Right.
So
to turn it into a large portion or a large sector of Vermont into nothing but a tenant class.
Right.
Yeah. No, I see where you're going with that.
We have to start making policy that would help give the younger generation the same chances that
I agree. It's very bothersome. I see some programs and they're not promoting that. They're not promoting that at all.
They've maintained power. They've forgotten what it was like to start off.
Yeah.
And it's still, because you can't compare an $80,000 house with a 20% down payment to a $400,000 house with a 20% down payment.
No, you can't.
Even if interest rates were 20% back then and 7% today, it's not the same. It's not the same struggle.
There was a push, and I don't know how far this is going to go. S127, which is there's a CHIP program which is similar to a TIF, and I don't know all the ins and outs. It's a tax incentive. It has something to do with the education fund or funding and taxes where they go to. But there are zones, Tier 1A, Tier 1B, and there's Tier 2 in there. Tier 2 was at risk of being pulled out, and Tier 2 would have opened up vast areas in rural Vermont that would have benefited vast number of towns in rural Vermont. And there was a hard push to remove Tier 2. Which doesn't make any sense. We already had, I think it was Act 181, which was the reform to Act 250. It wasn't a reform at all. It made it worse. It didn't do anything. It thumbed its nose at rural Vermont. And this removal in this CHIP program would have done the same thing. Now, it's still in the amendment process. I think it's stuck in a couple of different committees, but it was a bone of contention in a number of committees this past week. So just to give you a little bit of background, and it looks like, Dylan, you and I need about another hour more because we're running out of time and we've only got
we're getting close.
30 more seconds. But as usually, we didn't cover most of what we wanted to cover. But ladies and gentlemen, it's always nice being able to try to inform our listeners. So please remember, stay safe, stay informed. Listen to Right Side Up.
Dreams to remember. Listen, honey, I've got dreams.